This pandemic, as you may have heard, is devastating the airline industry, with commercial air travel down nearly, listen to this number, 70% from last year. That's a big drop. Last week, U.S. Airlines started furloughing tens of thousands of employees, from the flight attendants to the baggage handlers. But so far, Delta Airlines has avoided any of the furloughs, but more than 40,000 employees have taken an unpaid leave of absence, and more than 17,000 accepted early retirement and departure packages. Without a new aid package from Washington, the airline may now have to begin furloughs next month. Ed Bastian is the CEO of Delta Airlines and joins us to discuss this morning. Ed, always good to see you. I'm sorry, though, that it's under these circumstances. So what needs to happen at your company to keep employees on the job?
Well, thanks for having me, Gail. It's good to talk to you as well. You know, we don't know, first of all, what's going to happen in Washington. It's been a real roller coaster these last few weeks around stimulus and airline aid. Things seem to change by the day, and I certainly hope, for the sake of the 30,000 airline employees in the industry that have been furloughed, that they quickly get called back to work. But fortunately, at Delta, our people are amazing, as they always are. We call it the Delta difference. I asked them at the start of the pandemic to do everything they could to preserve cash, to preserve jobs for each other. We had almost half the company take unpaid leaves of absence throughout the summer, all voluntarily. Another 20%, as you mentioned, took early retirement. So as a result of that, they have protected their jobs. So for almost all of our work groups, we will not be facing furloughs come this winter. We are still working with our pilots union. They are the lone exception. Hopefully we'll get to that same position, but for now at Delta, we've been able to avoid furloughs, which is great.
That is really great, Ed. But you know, the airline relief bill, it's not looking good right now. What is your message to Washington to get them to understand how dire this is? What is really at stake here?
Well, it's 30,000 jobs, first of all, for those employees at other airlines that have been furloughed that we want to get back into the industry. It's about keeping our national infrastructure in place. The airline employees have worked throughout this entire pandemic selflessly, keeping the airways open, getting people who need to get to places, to their homes, to their loved ones in times of crisis. And we think the government support, which has worked for the 6 months, keeping this airline industry intact, has been quite effective, but at the present time, the virus isn't where we thought it would be when the first CARES Act was passed. So hopefully the second extension will get us into the spring, and then we'll all be hopefully in a much better place dealing with the virus than we are today.
Yeah, Mr. Bastian, it's Tony DeCoppola. I want to pick up on that last point. You know, lawmakers in Washington are worried about cost, and they're wondering, if we give you a lifeline, exactly how long of a lifeline is it going to be? How much money is going to be involved? So what's your best guess at present for when the airline industry will be back to something like normal?
Well, right now, as Gail mentioned, we're at about 30% of prior year levels, which is dramatic. Much better than it's been, and travel is starting to slowly pick up. We expect for the upcoming holiday seasons, hopefully we'll get a nice bump. But as you look at confidence that we're doing, certainly at Delta, to restore travel amongst customers, when you look at what our customers are telling us about their satisfaction, which is at an all-time high, with the initiatives that we have taken, and you look at that combination with the advances in the medical field around vaccines, testing, tracing, therapeutics, hopefully in 6 months' time, by the spring, we'll be in a very different place. I don't expect we'll be through this by the spring, but we should certainly be in a much better place to start to see real sustained recovery.
Mr. Bastian, you mentioned you're hoping for a bump around the holiday season. I certainly hope that for you, but you've got the CDC telling people, you know, do your Thanksgiving locally, you know, stay inside, don't travel. So given that, you know, how likely is it that in the near term there's going to be a benefit?
Well, you know, first of all, while we say we're at 30%, we still have a lot of people traveling. So at Delta this week, we're going to carry 1 million people. So it's not as if people are not traveling.
Ed, I'm sorry to cut you off. I lost my train of thought there, in flight, as you might say, but I found it again. What I wanted to ask you is, given that the CDC is saying don't travel for Thanksgiving, what is your message to people about how safe it is to get on an airplane today?
People are still very scared.
People are worried.
It's absolutely safe, and I respect the CDC guidance. I talk to Dr. Redfield all the time. It's not, certainly if you're at risk, you should not be traveling, but that's not true for everybody. We have over 1 million people a week that are traveling, and it is entirely safe. There's a couple data points on that. Just yesterday, the International Airline Association came out with a stat that this year, on a global basis, over 1 billion people have traveled in the air, over 1 billion. There are 42 documented cases of transmission of the virus on board aircraft worldwide. And almost all of those were in the first couple of months in January through March, before masks were in place and before all the protocols in place. And virtually no documented transmissions over the last few months. At Delta, we don't have a single documented transmission of virus spread above on our planes.
Wow.
And we are carrying over 1 million people a week. So I think people need to understand and look at the facts. They need to make a decision what's right for them. But the reality is air travel is incredibly safe.
All right. Is there a certain section you should sit in that's safer than others, in the front, the middle, the back, Ed Bastian? Then we got to go.
Gail, I know you like sitting up front, and that's always the best place.
I wasn't talking about me, Ed. I was asking about for people, Ed Bastian. Is there a safe place to sit?
They're all great seats.
Thank you. They're all great seats. We all get there in one piece.
They're all
Thank you,
great
sir.
seats.
Thank you.